I would like to sit here and give you a Royal Rumble-esque introduction, but it's not my thing. Welcome along to the Argyle Life Green and White podcast here on Sunday night. Usual bit of housekeeping. Do like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. And do get involved in tonight's show. Get your comments in, get your questions in. We will show all the comments that we can, and I will put as many questions to the panel by the end of the show. Sam, John, and Adam are with me for the duration of tonight's show. Usual sort of running order, match run through from Reading. We'll go on to the player focus. We will then touch on Tuesday. Well, we won't touch. We'll discuss in depth Tuesday night's home game against Stevenage, fellow playoff chasing Stevenage, before we get to any AOBs. But without further ado, Sam down. It was a Saturday in Berkshire. Nearly 3,000 members of the Green Army crammed themselves into the Select Car Leasing Stadium, or the Majewski, as it should and always should be known. And from what I could tell watching the full match replay earlier, there was only one set of fans in vocal voice throughout the game, and it wasn't quite the atmosphere Liam Richardson was hoping for.
No, definitely the Argyle fans were the more vocal of the two, without a shadow of a doubt. Really loud away end, really raucous away end, which actually surprised me a little bit. Often when it's a away end of, shall we say, larger numbers, it's often lesser in volume because without being derogatory, maybe it's some of the people who don't always go so often, don't always want to sing and chant so much, and those who do want to sing and chant are a bit more spread out across the stand. But I do think it actually happened to an extent whereby the people who wanted to sing did congregate together, and I think people joined in and had a chant, who maybe wouldn't normally always do so. So yeah, very good atmosphere from the Green Army. Reading supporters just far more concerned with throwing coins and similar antics than actually trying to get behind their team. So yeah,
I saw a tweet earlier saying two young members of the Green Army have profited quite well from Reading's fans' antics. Something like £2.56 in pocket money has been collected.
Yeah, good on them. Good on them. Did you want my run through here as well, or? Yes, okay. Can't be too dissatisfied with that. A point at one of the best home teams in the league. I think they've only lost something like once at home since August, I think I saw. It's a stat. So you absolutely can't complain at a draw. It's one of the better home teams in the league against one of the better away teams in the league, albeit they do have quite a lot of draws at home, which it was another one of those. So I think that they're one of, I think that without checking, I think they're one of the draw heavier teams in the league, certainly on their own turf. So it wasn't a shocking result, although for us, actually, it's only our second away draw of the season in the league and only our fifth draw overall in the season. So it's a bit of a case of, the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object in that respect. And indeed, a draw it was. So I think probably just about a fair result over 90 minutes. I think actually we were the better team of the two, certainly in terms of chance creation. I think you maybe, could say it was one of those games where Reading had more of the play, but Argyle had more of the chances. I think would be a fair summation, and I do, as long-term viewers of the podcast will know, I do value chance creation over having the play. So I think you have to say that Argyle were very good value for the point. Maybe could have even had all three. Don't get me wrong, I'm certainly not saying it was a vintage Plymouth Argyle performance of recent weeks. I feel some of the pressing was a bit maybe sluggish compared to some of the away games. We were a little bit, certainly in the first half, we were not at our best. Second half, we were far closer to our best. If not quite outright there. And I do think we were the team most likely to win it by the end. Reading, our defence was actually largely pretty good. I think Mackenzie had a good game. Mitch had a good game. Ross had a good game. They didn't really have many chances. Reading's just got to run through the goals. Obviously, first goal, we're trying to have a bit of a passing move. Edge of the Reading area. Caleb Watts loses the ball quite cheaply, breaks down Reading's right-hand side. Owen Dale is back, covering Mackenzie, and just... It's one of those where he's just got to put his laces through it, tries to be a bit too cute with it, and player gets in, and it stays. It's a goalkeeping error, unfortunately. I think he's just, not entirely his fault, because they blame Caleb Watts and Dell for the build-up, but he's flat-footed, he's too far to his near post, doesn't get across his goal well. I think he thinks it's going over. And he only realises too late that it isn't. But it's, yeah, you got to protect your goal better than that, in my view. Started off flat-footed and stayed flat-footed. Shouldn't have got lobbed from there. Cheap goal in many ways. Two very viable places could have been stopped in terms of cutting the cross off at source by Dell just being a bit more conservative with booting it out, and also by Luca just being a bit more aware. So yeah, cheap goal early on in the game. But we showed resilience. We came out well. Lovely Ronan Curtis delivery. Great Alex Mitchell header. Found him in the box. And that one, not a header at all, was it? What am I talking about? I reverted to default mode there because Alex Mitchell was so often winning headers. Great
35-yard screamer, Sam. Is that what he would say?
No, yeah. But anyway, good movement to come free in the box and good finish. And 1-1. Obviously, Reading up the other end, and Plymouth Argyle's Powdy O'Connor scored against Plymouth Argyle. Oh dear, Luca, it was all going so well, wasn't it, with those 3 games in a row from Rotherham through to Doncaster, through to Wigan. When you wait for what long time for Luca Ashby-Hammond error to come at once, a bit like the bus is outside the ground at full time in that respect. But I do think it was, again, a goalkeeping mistake. Just, again, it's the sort of thing I've bemoaned in his earlier run in the team of like coming off his line, but like not quite fully coming off his line. It's, again, another one of those where I think he can claim it. But if he's not going to claim it wholeheartedly, just stay on your line and give yourself the best chance of making a save on the line. So again, another fairly cheap goal to give away. And then I think at that point we were confident was a bit dented. But second half we came out much brighter. To those of you who may have seen me walking up the steps at a time of which the minute began with 6, I can assure you I was watching on the TV screen for the first little portion of the second half. So, not the same as having the view in the ground, but I was still vaguely aware of what was going on. We definitely came out brighter, started the second half brighter, and were definitely good value for our goal when it came. I think it was building up to be honest. Really great quick thinking from Malachi Boateng with the quick throw in. Again, good cross from Curtis once again, and just a good reactive. I think it was Mitchell again who's in there, who gets the first contact, and the defender doesn't quite get enough to block it properly, and it goes to Caleb Watts, who finishes to make it 2-2. So when you look at it, I do think our two goals were quite high in terms of XG value. The Mitchell from the header was, and the Watts one was. Both had a lot of space and quite close in the area, whereas Reading's goals were not really much in terms of XG. The first one was a bit fluky, and the second one was probably their best chance of the game, and they did score from it. But again, it arose from a goalkeeping error, so they didn't really carve us open. They didn't outcreate us. Our defence was actually quietly pretty good all game, which maybe goes a bit under the radar because we conceded 2, but we shouldn't have conceded 2. Based on how the defence played, it was like a goalkeeping error, if I'm being blunt. And then I think we ended the game strongly. One thing, let the credit be as loud as the criticism. Very good save by Luca Ashby-Hammond from their counter-attack from the goalkeeping long throw, which was Reading's only chance of note in the second half. The big long throw out by their keeper breaks down their, I can't remember which player it was, one of their attacking players, gets the shot away, and Luca Ashby-Hammond makes a very good reflex save. So, yeah, credit as loud as the criticism. Luca Ashby-Hammond did stop it going to 3-2 in that one. And I think then we probably should have won the game in 2 moments. I missed one, actually. One of them was chronologically earlier in the game, was the Pepple penalty shout. I think it's a penalty. We'll maybe come to the ref watch in a minute. But I do think we should have had a penalty. At the time, I wasn't convinced. Seeing it back, I think it's a penalty. It's one of those where it's like the one we gave away for Bradford home earlier this season. It's soft, but by the letter of the law book, it's a foul. It is a foul. And then the one where we possibly could have won it at the end, and I'm coming into land now because I've talked a while, was the Ronan Curtis counter-attack at the end. He had 3 options. He could have shot, he could have released Dimitri to his right, and he could have released Dell to his left. And I think genuinely all 3 options had the pros and cons. I think the pro to shooting was he had the energy, he had momentum, he was carrying the ball forward, he was in the zone. Cons to shooting is that it was just a difficult shooting position. In terms of releasing Dimitri to his right, the pros to that is that if he pulls it off, it's an absolute hugely high XG value of a chance because Dimitri's then completely through on goal unguarded. But the cons to it is it's a very difficult pass to pull off. And then the Owen-Dell to his left. The pros were that it was a relatively easy pass and a good shooting position. The cons are that it's Owen-Dell and he can't shoot. but I do think you should have squared to Owen-Dell.
I feel like Dale maybe needs like a very low XG chance to become a high XG chance for him. He seems to be very, very good at hitting the ball very, very hard and with incredible accuracy from 30 yards out. But the closer in he gets,
yeah. But I do think that of those options, and I'm being a bit tongue in cheek, but to go Frank Lampard, no. But seriously, I do think that squaring to Owen-Dell was the best option. I know he's not a very good finisher, but I think the pass is on. He's in a much better shooting position than Curtis himself is. I do think you should have squared it. That being said, I understand why he shot, because he's a confidence player. He's got flair, he's got panache. That's what I love about Ronan Curtis. That's what many of us love about Ronan Curtis. And he saw the away end in it go celebrating in his mind as he released that shot. And I think he wanted that Hollywood moment, which I can understand. But overall, yeah, very much good value for our point. I think we were the better of the two teams. Not by a lot, but by a fractional margin, and every confidence we're still in the playoff shake-up, especially with Huddersfield dropping points. Very big game Tuesday night, and I will hand back over. That was one of my longest run through ever, so I'm very sorry for waffling. Handing back to you, Joe.
And you've made me cross out a lot of what I had written down for tonight's show as well. Adam, it's funny how people see games differently, and obviously in particular managers who, with no disrespect to the three of you guys, appear to have a greater read on the game than perhaps we do, or certainly in their eyes they do. Liam Richardson last night at full time claimed that Reading probably didn't get their rewards and that they were value for more in the game. I watched that game back earlier on, and my overwhelming reaction was they've done exactly what they did at Home Park on Boxing Day. They did not bother second half and were just trying to see the game out. We almost, with 10 men, had an opportunity to get right back into the game on Boxing Day, and we almost won the game here. So Liam Richardson sitting on 4 points from 2 games against Argyle this season. There's every possibility they should actually be sitting here with 1 as a maximum.
Do you know, I was going to say exactly the same when I heard those comments. Richardson perhaps saying they didn't get what they deserved. He might be right, because they potentially deserved 0 rather than 3. Obviously you'll get managers comment like that. And yes, they are far more qualified than we are 99% of the time. Occasionally you'll have Wayne Rooney, but, who do that? I think it's... it's a game where, I absolutely agree with you pretty much entirely what you said there, Joe. Had Reading continued with a bit of attacking impetus, which they had a little bit more of in the first half, don't get me wrong, and didn't go into a second half at home where they've only lost once in God knows how long and said, we're gonna defend for this and just try nothing at all. Yeah, they might have won the game. But it's now twice this season we've just seen a team so, boring, so unimaginative, when really all of the cards are in their favour. One of the time they had a 3-goal lead against 10 men, and this time, as much as the game was closer, they had the advantage at home and decided to sit on it. And sometimes you deserve what you get, sometimes you don't. I don't buy that comment at all. I think it's very easy for a manager to say when they're trying to cover their own tactical failings that we're a little bit unlucky. If you say so, Liam. I think you're a little bit unimaginative, quite honestly, and it's really cost you there. I don't think it's the sort of game where one side was particularly dominant either. Like, admittedly, I think I'm with Sam in the sense that I think if a team deserved to win the game, it was us. But at the same time, I don't think a draw is totally unfair. Like, it wasn't this sort of case of, say, for example, we had a 1-1 draw at Peterborough. Say, for example, we were 1-1 at home to Luton and one of their late chances goes in. That would have been an injustice. I don't think a draw here is an injustice, but absolutely the case, that saying Reading didn't get what they deserved can be interpreted one way, and I'm afraid to say it's not the way that Liam Richardson is thinking. His side were much more fortunate to come out of it with a point, and do you know, it's interesting to debate whether or not it suits them or us more. I think ultimately, with us being in the chasing pack and with the win that would have put us level on points with them, we could have done with it a little bit more. But at the same time, as I mentioned, at halftime, they held all the cards in that game. And really, with something else, with different tactics, could potentially have got a win. And I think they'll see that as 2 points dropped for different reasons. We'll see it because ultimately we were the better side of the two, albeit slightly. They'll see it as, well, we had the lead here and we've been pretty roundly outplayed in the second half. So yeah, potentially it leaves us the more happy. But yeah, I saw, just to summarise this spiel, a comment come up say Richardson is deluded. Yes, he is.
Yeah, I couldn't believe
Can't
what
even
I was
spell his
hearing.
own name, can he?
No, it's very disappointing.
When I heard that comment, I was a little bit surprised given what I'd heard from the ground yesterday, and then sort of watched it back today. It makes my mind boggle even more. John, one thing Liam Richardson probably can be frustrated at is that there were periods of the first half where we did look wide open at times. And it was a basketball game. The game was played at a ferocious pace, certainly in the first 25, 30 minutes. I recall on Tuesday night, you were texting the group chat frantically saying that we needed to get control of that game against Wigan early on. We just needed a bit of composure and to breathe whilst in possession. We absolutely needed to try and wrestle control of that one yesterday, didn't we? Because one area Reading were strong was the first half.
Yeah, I think I actually have a slightly more charitable interpretation of Liam Richardson's comments than Sam or Adam. I mean, to be clear, I think the reason he's making those comments is because managers will usually, go to bat for their own team. So I'm not saying it was motivated by kind of, the pundit's desire to sum up the game most accurately as much as he wanted to put a spin on it for his own purposes, which is obviously fair enough. But I actually thought Reading probably shaded it yesterday on the whole. I'm not sure I really agree with Sam that we had very clear chances. To me, the best chance of the second half, I thought, was probably the one that Ashby Hammond saved well, to his credit, when he probably deserves credit for little else in the game. That was a good save. And there were times, late on when the game became stretched, when they came forward and they looked like they had some good sort of positions. We had them as well, but I don't know. I think it was one of those games that it could have gone either way, and you probably would have said it's not the world's biggest injustice, but I would probably shade it slightly more towards them having deserved it a little bit more than us, actually. To your question about control, yeah, I think it's a different scenario. Obviously, you do want to control every game of football that you play in, ideally. The Wigan game, the reason I was, ironically, as you said, frantically texting about how frantic we were, was that the game was clearly there for us. Wigan were crap. I mean, every time they got the ball, they passed it out of play. They had no foothold in the game. We were really aggressive in terms of, winning the ball back high up the pitch. And it just felt like those patterns of play were there for us to play if we slowed down. And in the end, that turned out to be exactly right. The second goal, being completely a case in point. The third one as well was some comedy defending from them, but still a very good move, calm move from us. But you're not going to have that level of control every week. And the reason I was so frustrated against Wigan is because it seemed like one of those opportunities where the opposition was so poor and we were so much better than them that we were sort of shooting ourselves in the foot. Against better teams in the league, you're unlikely to have that same degree of control. So it's about how you manage the game in different ways. I think it's not necessarily about, it would have been brilliant if we could have gone there yesterday and played on the front foot a lot more and won the ball back higher up the pitch a lot more like we did on Tuesday night eventually. And as I've said many times over the last few weeks, I think that when we are really on it, there is no team in this league that can live with us doing that. But yeah, it's going to be harder against the team that are just outside the playoffs than the team that are in or just outside the relegation zone. And so, when there are periods in the games where we have to suffer, to quote a former manager of ours, and pretty much every manager in football these days, but particularly him, I just felt we needed to be a little bit more disciplined, actually. Like the problem was probably, not the opposite to Tuesday in the sense that it's always good to have composure, but the opposite in the sense that then I thought we really needed to improve how we were playing on the front foot. Whereas this time we actually probably needed to tighten up a little bit more, not play on the back foot, but we were just very open on a number of occasions. I felt that kind of lasted throughout the game. Don't think the shape was quite as good, or at least not executed quite as well as it has been, at times in recent weeks. And on the one hand, that's frustrating to see. On the other hand, we're not going to play brilliantly every game, and I think that still compete well enough to come out of that game with a point. And who knows, if I speak, I'm in big trouble. Goalkeeper. Who knows? Hard to do counterfactuals, but it's hard to ignore the fact we've conceded 2 goals from keeper errors. And even though we were second best in the first half, if neither of those goes in, could be a very different story. And maybe we could have got our noses in front at halftime rather than trailing. But it was a bit of a frantic game, and I think composure is right, but I think the challenge yesterday, given how Reading started, was different. And I think it was to get a bit more control in the defensive sense, and just to sort of slow the game down a bit, rather than let's continue to play very fast and on the front foot, but let's just sort of slow those final actions down and just not snatch at that final ball, which was the case against Wigan. It was a different situation, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And as the comment on screen from Stevie Vaughan says on YouTube, it was a great performance when you consider we actually only had 13 fit players, and one of them was Herbie Kane. So, with his recent record, it's a little bit troublesome to call him a fit player, but he did look like he was capable of getting a lot deeper into the game. We're going to come on to player performances in a minute. Sam mentioned it earlier, so we'll just touch on it now. We obviously know Sam's opinion on it. Jon and Adam, your views on the penalty shout in the first half, Peppel, in a bit of a wrestling fight with their centre half. What do you think?
I'll go. Thank you, John. I see it as a classic subjective decision that is very much arguable either way, and therefore it's very difficult to say that the referees got it wrong. The analogy, I guess, of had there been VAR in this league, it would not have overturned it either way. The non-penalty decision would have stuck, and if it was given, it also would have.
McLaren.
Yeah, there we go. Well, Sham, you know how it is. I try it all the time. If it's a bit unfortunate when one of those goes against you, but I don't think it's one where we can necessarily beat the referee with a stick over it, because there's been plenty this season where we very much have had that option, and deservedly so. But this one, it's an either way one that unfortunately hasn't gone our way.
Anything to add, John?
I actually don't think it's a penalty, if I'm being honest and consistent about it. I think he sort of leans in. Look, if it had been given, sure, you can't have the most complaints in the world if you're a defender. It's the classic, you've seen them given. I think if that's given against my defender, I'm feeling like it's very, very soft. Look, I think in recent weeks we've had, apart from the Wigan game when we actually had pretty decent luck with the referee, we've had such poor refereeing decisions go against us, and so many much clearer cut penalties go against us. I'm thinking Rotherham, I'm thinking Mansfield in particular. I don't think this is in the same tier as those for me. I think it's soft.
Yeah, I think personally, I think you've hit the nail on the head, John. I think when you look at the incident itself, they've both got about as much of each other's shirt as the other, and it's a 6 of one, half a dozen, and then they've both just fallen to the ground. The lad's not wiped Bim's feet from underneath him. I think Adam's right as well. If it had been given and there was VAR around, there wouldn't be anywhere near enough evidence to overturn it. But equally, there isn't anywhere near enough evidence to say that it should be a penalty, in my opinion.
What I will say is I cannot remember a season where there's been such frustrating inconsistency from referees at this level when it comes to physicality.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what the standards are. You've seen penalties given both for and against us this season for basically nothing. Like, when you are literally like training your eyes at the replay, watching it really, really slow down hundreds of times to see if there's like a little touch in there. You've seen penalties and free kicks not given for the most blatant rugby tackle fouls ever. This doesn't seem to be like limited to one referee or one game. I think that there is a confusion among referees at this level about what the standards of physicality they're allowed to allow are. And Peppel, just quickly, Joe, if I may, said this before on the pod, but he's the most foul player I've ever seen in my time at Argyle without getting those decisions. It's been the case for years that big strikers don't get decisions because they're perceived as maybe being, 2 dozen one and half of the other or whatever. But Pepple is just rugby tackled relentlessly all game, every game. And that doesn't mean that every tackle on him is a foul. Again, I think that there is some physicality in football. And I think personally that penalty incident yesterday isn't really enough to make me think it is one, at least not in a clear way. But yeah, he's still not getting protected in games. He's still getting fouled all over the place. There just seems to be a total double standard around this. And I wonder now if it's not, at least not purely due to like a poor quality of refereeing per se, and maybe more due to some kind of conflicted directives that have come down. But maybe it's a downstream also the fact that football has just got a lot more physical this season. Like the sort of style du jour is a lot more kind of aggressive, physical, direct, than the sort of in vogue kind of pretty passing out from the back that we've seen in recent years, even sort of poorer teams trying to do it. So maybe that's a factor. It just feels like there's a lack of clarity around it to me coming from somewhere, and it's frustrating to see. So I don't really blame a lot of our fans for being angry that that's not given as a penalty, because we've had ones this season that have been given that we know were not anywhere near that level of contact. I think someone said to me, it's basically the rules one against Reading from the home game, and he gets sent off. I think there is a lack of consistency around that, and I don't, there'll be edge cases where you can debate it all night long, but yeah, I don't blame people for being confused on the whole.
I disagree that it's similar to the one on Boxing Day, because the one on Boxing Day rules had both arms sort of around the player and pulled him back as he went to shoot. But that's exactly.
I was just saying that someone said that to me. I mean,
that's exactly what happened to Alex Mitchell at Rotherham a fortnight ago when he was about to put the ball in the back of the net. And this goes back to your point on consistency. If you look at the penalty, if you go back to September and October, the Stockport penalty that was given and the penalty we got at home to Wigan, you compare that to the wrestling in the box against Mansfield, the Mitchell incident at Rotherham, and then that yesterday, what is and what isn't? That's what needs to be done down. You're either going to stop all the grabbing and jostling in the area, and you're just going to, instead of stopping a corner being taken, instead of blowing the whistle and having a chat with a defender, just give the penalty. Just don't bother being nice to them and giving them a chance to not do it. If you're spotting an infringement, just grow a pair of minerals, back the courage of your convictions, and just give the penalty. Stop having a chat with the players and saying, look, if you do that a second time, I'm going to give the penalty. Just give it the thing. And then before you know it, you will stop this happening. If you look at the Premier League a few years ago before he retired, Mike Dean gave something like 7 penalties in the first 8 or 9 weeks of the Premier League season, where he was giving fouls for pulling of the shirt or grabbing a player at a corner. He then sat out a week and no more of those were awarded. So if a referee went back to do that, then we might be able to get more consistency. But it doesn't really need a broad talking point, because I don't think it was a penalty anyway. But
it wasn't even the most frustrating Pepple-related inconsistency yesterday, which is that he gets booked for time wasting after 30 seconds, which is contentious in my opinion. I'm not sure he can necessarily get out of the way. But as someone who is, frustrated when players don't get punished for kicking the ball away, which they seem to do 100 times a game, fine. I'm not going to necessarily complain that it's a harsh standard against one of our players. But then having set his stall out like that, the referee just seemed to allow all other time wasting in the game. It was like, I'm going to sort of make a point of booking you really early on so we can stamp this out. But then, I think in the last 10 minutes, a Reading player did literally exactly the same thing to stop us taking a throw, no yellow card, not even a talking to. It's just, seems like standards are all over the place on multiple fronts.
I want to quickly have a final word, Nick. I don't want to talk about referees for too long, but I have heard from somebody who would quite reliably know, I won't name my source, that the referees were told at the start of the season, right, we're seeing too many penalties for all this business of jostling in the box. We're going to take a more laissez-faire approach to it. And the only thing I can think, if that's what they were told, which I do believe they were, is that some of them are following it and some of them are just completely not, which would explain for the inconsistency we're seeing. And Joe, thank you for that rather excellent mixed metaphor in your earlier comments.
I don't know what mixed metaphor you're on about, but I'm sure you'll explain it to me when we come off live. The other inconsistency, very quickly, I'm going off on a tangent. I'm going to stop myself. is this whole 8-second rule about the goalkeeper holding onto the ball and things. And you see a referee after 4 seconds start to count them down, and then they'll get to 1 and they won't give the corner. They'll just let the goalkeeper take a little bit longer. I watched the Premier League game the other day, 16 seconds the goalkeeper held onto the ball. Just lunacy. Anyway, right, half an hour in. We've got to rattle through this because I'm going to try my very best to keep this to an hour tonight. So keep these next bits short and sweet as possible. Player focus. We're going to work from the front to the back of the pitch here. So, Adam, you wanted to speak about one of our attackers from yesterday's game.
Yeah, because Ronan Curtis, and there's been a few bits and pieces from Sam's run through that have obviously covered what he did in the game. He's got an assist for Mitchell's goal. He doesn't get given the goal contribution, obviously, for Watts' goal, but the contribution he makes to the goal is obviously enormous. And the final moment where he drags the shot wide on the break, where, yeah, potentially it could have been a match winner. Now, I think it's worth us just taking a minute to appreciate, and I know it's something that feels like an obvious point, to appreciate what a difference Ronan Curtis has made to this side since he signed. There is no other player in this entire league to have played as many minutes as Ronan Curtis and to have more expected assists. He is that consistent in the way that he involves himself in his team's play. He sets up chances and invariably, gets his rewards for it. And I think we saw the best of that in the way he did it. I mean, the set piece has always been a threat. I think the fact that for what felt like a very brief moment of having the opportunity to have both Joe Rawls and Ronan Curtis as set piece threats just felt like nothing we'd had for a very long time. And I think as much as Rawls isn't able to contribute to that anymore, Curtis clearly is. And he showed it. It's a really accurate, really clever one, I think, to pick out Mitchell for the first goal, and he does the rest. Equally, I think there's a lot of intelligence there in what he does. Obviously, the way he links up with Boateng to set up the second goal, with the quick throw taken, Curtis getting there, getting the ball into the middle, it looks simple, and it is simple, but it's very clever. A lot of teams miss that opportunity, and I don't think either player there was going to allow that to happen. I think there's a lot that Curtis does well with his footballing brain that I like, and it's absolutely part of the chances he develops. And I just think, with all of that in mind, it surprises me perhaps even more that he's decided to take a shot on in the last minute. Now, I agree with Sam. I don't think, and I think, Joe, you may well have said the same. I don't think, and do you know what, John, you may have even said the same. I might be quoting all of you here when I say that I don't think it's a particularly awful decision or egregious decision from him to take a shot in those circumstances. I can 100% understand why he's done it. I just think, yes, it's trust your ability to get the shot, get the winner, get the moment. But I don't think I trust possibly any other player in this league to make a telling pass in that situation. And it just felt like the absolute perfect time for his ultimate strength, his creativity, to come to the fore. And if not play that tough pass to Amici, then at the very least get it to Owen Dale. And yes, it's Dale who hasn't had the best time in front of goal this season, but perhaps he needs that. Perhaps exactly what Owen Dale needs is a moment last minute of a big game to get the winner, and we'll see him shine. And that was an opportunity to do it. Now, again, I say all of this in the sense of I understand why Curtis has done it. And to be honest, if this instant happened in, say, the 50th, 60th minute of the game, I don't think we're tearing it apart nearly as much. I think it's very much the case that it is the last moment. It is something that just clings onto your mind of, oh, if that last moment, went our way, then obviously we're laughing. So it's a shame. It's disappointing. I think possibly he'll regret the decision he's made to take a shot there. But I don't think any of that either should take away from all the good that he's done in the game and all of the good that he's done ever since signing. It seems with every passing game, all the more barmy that Darren Moore didn't play him at Port Vale, and they were willing to let him go as easy as they did, because the difference he's made is just superb. And I think in the main, aside from one incident which we can dissect to the death, I think in the main, the influence he had yesterday was highly positive, and long may that carry on.
Moving further back through the field, John, midfield.
Yeah, just quickly on Curtis, if I may. I actually have a slightly different take to Adam, which I think he's not been at his best in the last few games, to be honest with you. I think he's looked tired. I think he's had a couple of scuffers like that shot at the end yesterday. It was obviously a very hard chance. And I wouldn't blame him for being tired. He's been relentless for us. It's still a praiseworthy point, though, because even Ronan Curtis at, maybe 70% of, I think, what his best level for us has been, is still creating, 2 or 3 big chances a game. It's like extraordinary to have a player who is just that consistent with delivery and getting in the right areas. So anyway, yeah, just wanted to add that on Curtis. I was going to just very quickly spotlight Herbie Kane, and I won't spend a long time on it because I think it's very similar to a point that was made on the Wigan pod. But I just wanted to say how, I was delighted when we signed him. I think I said at the time, the injury risk is a downside, but he is a player who shouldn't be here really on ability. He should be in the Championship. And I think he's showing that, even at probably not quite full fitness or maybe even fairly far off full fitness. He's just a metronomic presence in midfield. And as I said earlier, that kind of calming influence, that composure that we need in games, especially games like yesterday where we were a bit open and sort of under the cosh for periods. He just, the little little passes that he makes, he covers so much ground without sort of appearing to, he kind of glides around the pitch. It kind of makes it look effortless, but every time you look up, he's in a different part of the pitch, just kind of keeping things ticking over. It's also like superintending the game in a way. I just think he's great, and it's going to be a lot to ask him to do 3 starts in a week, but I think we're going to have to on Tuesday unless we perceive that to be an injury risk, because he's obviously not going to play against Huddersfield next weekend because he is on loan from them, for those not aware. Which means he gets a nice 10 days off, right? Because I think we don't have a game in midweek, do we, next week? So, I think if we think he could even do an hour of that game, it's going to be crucial. We'll come on to a Stevenage preview, but I think against that type of team in particular that are going to be a bit more kind of stolid and tough to break down than maybe some of the other teams we played recently. I think having someone with his kind of guile just to keep things again ticking over, but then also have the kind of vision and range and set piece threat as well. I think you mentioned Rules and Curtis from set pieces. Don't forget Herbie Kane. I mean, he's taking free kicks, especially from kind of deep areas off Curtis, and has had a lot of success with that in recent games as well. So, it's really great to see, and I am desperately hoping that we can pick him up in the summer for a bargain price, and the Huddersfield's loss will be our gain, but we'll see.
If anyone can, Derek can. Right, galloping our way towards the defence, Sam Down.
Alex Mitchell for me. All I'll say is that Alex Mitchell probably needed to have a good game if he wasn't going to get a bit of a pasting for the certain clip that emerged in midweek of him having a lot of fun, shall we say, at Cheltenham Festival. And I feel it's one of those, if he'd have made an error that led to a goal, he would have got absolutely slaughtered for it, and it would have given a very easy stick to beat him with. But he had a very good game. Danger in both boxes. Not danger in both boxes. Good in both boxes. Danger in the attacking sense, got a goal. And very good in the defensive sense of winning his headers, marking his men very well, cutting out chances where they came. And was involved in both our goals. We scored our first and made the first contact on our second, which then went back to Watts, as I mentioned. So, I think he had an excellent game, proved that he can burn the candle at both ends, as it were. And, there's a lot of positive stuff there about him. Real leader on the pitch, real vocal personality. Didn't really put a foot wrong in the defensive sense. Maybe his distribution wasn't the best, but it never is. That's just not the type of player he is. And I think that the only disappointment is that he didn't do like a galloping horse celebration or something after scoring his... Did he?
Yes, he did.
I didn't
do you not
see
see
that.
it?
Okay.
Very much so, yeah.
I thought he just ran over and celebrated. It wasn't meant to be a galloping horse. But
you may not have been able to see it from the TV underneath the ground, but yeah, he definitely.
No. Hey, I didn't miss any goals. I missed about 15 minutes-ish, but no goals.
Come on, Adam. That's a load of minerals, Adam. Come on.
and I was back up in time for our second. Thank you. But Alex. Again, despite the fact that I've managed to get myself a ribbing for being under the stand, and also a ribbing for apparently missing something that did happen. Probably more the fact that I was limbs flying over seats celebrating goals, more than the fact of being under the stand. I did miss the galloping celebration. I'm pretty sure they didn't show it on the highlights, or if they did, must have been not concentrating after noting down the initial goal. But he did do a celebration, which is great. And Ronan Curtis apparently fell over as well, which is clearly I missed all of this making my notes. But there we go. That happened. That's my view on the Alex Mitchell performance.
Yeah, Mitchell galloped into the corner and Ronan Curtis unfortunately fell over. So it was the perfect metaphor for Cheltenham Festival Week, wasn't it? We're working our way back because I am going to take the talking point of Luca Ashby-Hammond, because I'm told by the three on the panel I'm going to be the fairest view on this from the three of them. So here we go. Look, I think we saw possibly some of the best and arguably some of the very worst from Ashby-Hammond at times yesterday. His distribution is good. It is good. He can get us going forward quickly. I mean, there was one ball he pinged out to the left wing. I can't remember who it was got onto it, whether it was Pepple or Dale or something, but it sent us up the field in about 33 seconds. And then you've got there was a very good save in the first half. But the frustration that I have with Ashby-Hammond is whenever he tends to make a good save, he then tends to palm it straight into the danger zone. It just goes straight into the middle of the area or in the direction of an oncoming attacker. The save in the second half is superb. Take nothing away from that. That is genuine, possibly game-changing save, that. If we'd gone on to win that game, we would have looked back on that moment and said, that may well have been the difference in the game. But you cannot get away from the fact there were mistakes in there. The second goal is just a calamity. I have a little bit more of an issue regarding Owen Dale's action in the first goal than perhaps Ashby-Hammond's, because Dale is running back towards goal. He knows Randall Williams is on his right-hand side, and yet he tries to flick it round the corner on the right-hand side. I don't understand what you're trying to do. You've got two options. You either try and get it back to Ashby-Hammond if you can, or you just put it out of play. The one thing this team have become good at in recent weeks is not overplaying in defence. It's just get rid of the danger. That's why we praise Mitchell and Ross so much, is because the first thing they do, if they can't do anything with it, is just get it out of play. Make sure that you are not putting the team in danger. And unfortunately, Dale did put us in serious danger. And Randall Williams has that quality. Let's not forget it. This is a guy who was excellent for Exeter City back in the day in this division when he was there. His spell at Bolton probably didn't work out as well as he would have liked, but he has quality. We weren't able to stop the cross. And look, Ashby-Hammond's in a bit of no man's land. It's gone over him. It's gone into the back of the net. I think you could see the players' reactions. They couldn't quite believe that we'd conceded to that level of goal. But I still believe that it should never have got to that point. I think we should have dealt with it long before that. Second goal, unfortunately, I don't have a huge amount to say. But I think whilst a lot of people were quite happy yesterday on social media to pile in, we should also remember that we did see some of the good bits of Ashby-Hammond yesterday. Now, I accept a lot of the time the bad bits outweigh the good bits, but as Sam said about that save in the second half, you have to make your praise just as loud as the criticism you make him. So therefore, I just wanted to be a little bit more balanced than perhaps the other three would have been on Luca Ashby-Hammond. Now, I do want to move this conversation on. However, there is one bit of AOBs that I know one member of the panel is absolutely desperate to get out here. So
I might have hinted it earlier. Sorry, John.
At risk of upsetting Reading Council and those that are involved in the transport for Reading department at the local authorities, I present you the Right Honourable John Alsop.
Yeah, doing a urban planning watch, I think, here briefly. And I know that some of the individuals in the queue around me for the bus yesterday were absolutely thrilled to hear my opinion about it at the time. So I figured I would give it to a wider audience. Yeah, I just wanted to say quickly, if you're going to build a stadium miles out of town, you should provide transport. right? Like my sort of like personal view is that like any stadium anywhere should be, designed with accessibility in mind. I went to watch Atletico Madrid last year, and getting out of that ground, which is quite a way out of the city centre, is so easy. It looks like there's a swarm of people piling into the metro, and you think you're going to be there queuing for 2 hours, and everyone just kind of moves through, and you don't really ever stop, and then the trains come and you're on. And obviously, I understand that Reading is not Madrid to come in here with the understatement of the century, but I think all of the fans in the end, certainly when I was in the queue for the bus back into town, like managed to get on 3 buses, and yet one of those buses just sat there for 45 minutes, and then 2 buses turned up after that. I don't understand how hard it could possibly be to provide a few more buses on time to get people, because you cannot walk to that stadium, right? I mean, you could, but it's an hour. It's one of those, by I think far one of the furthest stadiums, even by the standards of these kind of plastic bowls that get built out on the motorways. It's far from the city centre. It's just really crap. And again, with apologies to people next to me in the queue yesterday who felt that I was a misery guts for moaning about this, and clearly seemed to be delighted to be spending 45 minutes of their day standing in a queue for a bus in a car park on an industrial estate on the outskirts of Reading. I didn't want to do that. I think it's unacceptable. And I think these like basic fan experience things should be called out from time to time. It's crap, absolute crap, and they need to do better.
The one thing that springs to mind when you're talking about that, John, is I remember going to Ellen Road 2 years ago, and the bus situation to get from Ellen Road back into Leeds city centre was just abysmal after that game. Like, I mean, look,
I'll give Reading some credit that they did. There were buses like special buses were provided. It wasn't like you had to pile onto the city like it did Kane. It's just they weren't. You have them there. Football games end typically at the same time every Saturday afternoon, right? Give or take a few minutes. Barmy. Anyway, sorry, you were saying.
And at the end of the day, at least that bus turned up. We'll come on to that again in a minute. Let's move the conversation on then, because we have got a game coming up again on Tuesday night, and that is at home to 5th placed Stevenage after this weekend's results, which means another spot in the playoff race has opened up. We all assumed when we were starting to get a little bit giddy about this that we were only going for 6th place. Well, now 5th place is very much within the grasp of those chasing at the top. And Sam, Dan, I'll let you go first on this one. Stevenage are coming to town. Alex Ravel, Jordan Houghton, of course, will be featuring in the Stevenage team. I can only assume that Saxon Early will be out injured. But little public service announcement. If you're going to boo Jordan Houghton, don't bother coming. There you go, because he is not a player who deserves booing. Anybody from that team is exempt from booing. That's just final. So just remember that. And I will be delivering an even stronger and more passionate public service announcement on Wednesday night ahead of Huddersfield. Anyway, Sam Down, Stevenage are coming to town. What do you think of this one?
Absolutely enormous game, isn't it? In the sense of just closing the gap. The Stevenage are now 5th. And I've got to say, enormous credit to Alex Revel and Stevenage for turning it around, because there was a time where it looked like they were just done. After their excellent start to the season, they had that dreadful run through December and January, didn't they? Where I think they barely won a game in that whole time. And our 1-1 draw there on New Year's Day, well, subjectively not a bad result, was quite disappointing because we didn't really play well. Stevenage didn't really play well. And we could have just won the game because that was right in the middle of Stevenage's really bad run, and we just didn't capitalise on it. And it looked like Stevenage for a time that they were just going to drop out of the playoff picture completely. But they haven't. Alex Revel turned it back around. In February was a good month for them. March has started okay for them, and they've got a few wins. And all of a sudden, from having dropped to like 1st to 8th, possibly even 9th at one point they were, they're now right back in the box seat, as it were, for a playoff spot, with Stockport on dreadful form, Huddersfield on dreadful form, Bradford wobbly a little bit, but they've probably got enough points on the board. Stevenage are now 5th, and looking good on their recent form to get into a playoff place again. So huge credit to Alex Revel. I'll tell you what, I think in manager of the season discussions, of which we've had a few offline over the last few weeks. I think we kind of forget Alex Revell's name just because of the fact that maybe it's just sort of recency bias of how their recent form's been. But when you look at A, the fact they picked back up, and B, how good an overachievement it is over the season with probably a budget that's lower mid-table at best, really, maybe even a relegation contending budget. He's done a fantastic job to keep them at the top end of the league by really just playing to the strengths. And I mean this in not such a derogatory way, but the absolute Stevenage DNA is all over that team. Stevenage have always been a big, horrible, physical team, will give you a tough time. And I think their fans would take that as a source of absolute pride. That's not really a derogatory comment. They've always been a, gritty, horrible team. And Alex
They've
Revell's got like that.
Had some lovely managers over the years as well, haven't they, Sam?
Yeah, Alex Revell seems at least a nice guy, unlike some of their previous managers with Mr. Wesley and Mr. Evans. But it's going to be a very tough game. They don't like, comment from Barbuck Green saying the football is terrific, and I don't really disagree, but it works for them. So fair play. I think it's going to be a very tough game because I think we're going to be out of our comfort zone at points on Tuesday night because our real success of 2026 on Tom Cleverley have been predicated on not having much of the ball. And I think what we're going to have to deal with is having most of the ball for once, which we don't often do anymore. Or at the very least, it's going to be dealing with a team who are quite content to sit back, deep block, try and hit us on the counter-attack and play for set pieces. So it's going to be challenging. I must admit I'm a little bit nervous about Ashby Hammond with their set pieces because they like to hang a lot of set pieces into the box. They like to get it under its crossbar, under the goalkeeper's crossbar. So I'm a little bit nervous about their threat.
Is Hazard not back?
I don't think so. But he might be back. He might be back.
I think there was a suggestion he would be.
Just to come back onto this, Connor Hazard and Brendan Galloway will both be in the squad. Eamon Benarouz is also fit, if you can remember him. He might be involved, but he wasn't involved before he got injured, so I don't imagine he's going to be involved now. But yeah, Galloway and Hazard will be eligible to return to the squad. Sam, just going to move it quickly on to Adam, because as I say, I do want to fly through this topic, and then we'll round it off. Adam, I was just going through Stevenage's results since October the 4th, when they beat Luton 2-0. Their wins in League One football are 1-0 away, 3-1 away on the 13th of December, and then their wins from that point are 1-0 at home, 1-0 at home, 2-1 at home, 2-1 at home, 1-0 away, 1-0 at home. Like, that is a team who know how to get a result, isn't it? When they're in the ascendancy in the game, they will see the game out. Therefore, it's vital that if we're going to make a quick start, we have to do it on Tuesday night.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can see this in a few different ways because, yes, they are incredibly effective with the tools that they've got at their disposal to get results. I mean, I'll link it to what I think has been said previously in terms of their style of play and the fact that, as Sam said, immense credit to Alex Revell for what he's been able to achieve with the players he's got. The fact that they are, indeed on points per game and indeed on points collected in the playoff place with this squad is incredible. And at the same time, if you were to look at their underlying data, you could argue they've been slightly lucky. I accept that that's not necessarily true. I think they've been good in doing what they do, but they are really, really boring to watch. And the fact that they're able to just scrape over the line all of that time, I mean, are they going to be able to do that for the remaining 10 games? I mean, possibly. They've done it for the previous 36. But it just feels like if they could come unstuck at some stage. And I wouldn't necessarily have them as favourites to make it at this point for that purpose. But yeah, they are absolutely very good at what they do. I mean, only Lincoln have conceded fewer goals in the season, and only Lincoln and Cardiff have kept more clean sheets than Stevenage. So they fight for the call better than anyone, I think, with what they've got. It's clearly set up in the sense that the team are all buying into the manager's philosophy. They all understand what's expected of them. They're clearly well drilled, well coached, and yeah, it's not a game that you will that I think anybody is necessarily going to enjoy watching. I mean, you'd hate, for example, to have a birthday on the day and have to watch it, and try and enjoy that as a result. That would be dreadful. So yeah, it's I'm not expecting much fun. I'm not expecting much in the way of chances at either end, based on the way that I think both teams like to play this football, like to play their football. But it also means that if we do get over the line, albeit by the odd goal or however we do it, it could feel absolutely huge in the context of our season. So we may not enjoy watching it, but if we're enjoying the ending, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, Stevenage have played 18 games away from home, 6 wins, 3 draws, 9 defeats. They've only scored 19 goals on the road. Sam, do you want to very quickly answer that one from VW Coco, the last Tuesday night win at home?
Oh, it would be very quick if I knew it. I can't really cheat and say Tottenham under 21's home in the Pizza Cup, can I?
No, you can't. We're on about serious games.
Like win at home.
Cheltenham in the Pizza Cup.
Last league Tuesday night win at home.
I'll leave you to think about that one.
The one that's in my head is the Millwall 5-1. I don't know if it's been a one. Yeah,
that was the Wednesday.
So John, Ollie, and
Wednesday.
Adam are all saying it's the Millwall game.
I wasn't, because I said it's a Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday. Okay. Oh, this is.
See, look at this. Look, it's the first serious comment that Ollie Hubbard's put in all season, and he still can't get it right.
Portsmouth.
Portsmouth, Michael Obafemi.
Rooney's final win, in final of his 4 wins as our manager in the league. Portsmouth home, it's most likely the one. We've not done it this season, have we? No, because we've only had Orient, which we lost. Well, Wickham was a Thursday night anyway, but we drew that anyway. Mansfield was a 1-1. Which we drew, and that's it. Don't think there's been any others. No, so I think we're looking at that Pompey game, which was November the 5th, 2024.
Nothing else happened that day.
Really, nothing eventful in world affairs happened that day at all, apart from Argyle beating Pompey.
Let's get back on track. John Alsop, presumably it's Connor Hazard in for Luca Ashby-Hammond, Brendan Galloway onto the bench for I assume one of the youngsters, and that's it, isn't it? The rest just doesn't get touched.
I can think of some other adverbs for Hazard in for Ashby-Hammond, but I'll leave them to your imagination. I assume if he's fit, he'll start, given that he's a number 1 keeper. Galloway, not a chance he'll start. I don't know. It's going to be a bit of a weird one team-wise, because we're so threadbare. That kind of means both that the players need to rest more than ever. And so if you have options to rotate, you presumably use them, but also there are fewer options to rotate. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's the same team. Again, I don't think we had any new injury issues, right, coming out of, when I say the same team again, I mean the same outfield team, because I assume again, it'll be Hazard in goal. But I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see that. It's also going well. It's been a bit of a weird few weeks, because obviously we had that loss at Rotherham and then at Luton in the Cup. Oh, no, sorry, the other way around, which felt like kind of back-to-back defeats, because it was. But obviously one of them was not in a competition we massively care about. So actually, we've only failed to win, 2 of our last 7 now? And 7 points in a week last week, despite not playing particularly well in 2 of those games, in my opinion, certainly not in one of them. Yeah, we're still on, absurd run of form. So, and that's been mostly with this team that, has come together and injuries aside, been a fairly consistent one to put out. So yeah, I'd imagine we're probably looking at a fairly unchanged team in terms of the outfield players, but we'll see.
And it is only 1 league defeat at home since Boxing Day, and that was against the team that are going to win this division. So that's not a bad run of form when you think the home form is still bottom 4 form, which is quite incredible. But it has picked up. So there we go. Right, score predictions.
Bottom 4 form, is it now?
It is. I've just checked it. In the home form table, we are 22nd in the division. In the home form table.
I'm surprised by that, because we really have
to get points per game at home, or
24 from 18. 7 wins, 3 draws, and 8 defeats. I mean, to be fair, the 12th best home record in the division is on 27. There's a massive cluster between 27 and 24. It has tightened up.
Yeah, okay. I wonder
also
if that might be possibly a points per game construct, that we've maybe played 1 or 2 more home games in some teams, than some other teams, and therefore maybe we played 1 or 2 less home games. I mean, to say obviously with Stevenage and Huddersfield coming up, but other teams have played more home games than us possibly. So ours is maybe lower on points, but not lower on points per game. Is the only thing I might think of that. I'm surprised at that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Right, score prediction. Adam Price, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I think I predicted it for the reverse fixture. It didn't quite come in. And given the run and given the tiredness and the perhaps lack going forward on both sides, I'm going to go for it again and say goalless draw. 0-0.
Many of them to the pound. John Alsop.
Fresh off predicting that we would draw 2-2 with Reading at the weekend, which is exactly what happened. I then said, while making that prediction, that we would go on to win 2 home games this week, and so I will stick with that and say a 2-0 home win. Sound down?
I really am in 3 minds. I don't have a firm feeling either way. If you have to push me, I think Stevenage have got a goal in them with their set piece threat. Even if Hanson's back, he might not be 100% fresh. At the same time, I feel that I think we need to start Herbie Kane, because I do think that he's like the lock picker, that when we're going to have a bit more of the ball and they're going to have a deep block, he can open them up in a way that maybe not all the other midfielders can. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I'm going to go for a repeat of the away fixture and rounding off a pair of draws against Stevenage this season is my prediction.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it'll be in between what you and John think. I think 2-1 win. I actually can see us getting our head in front and then maybe the last sort of 20 minutes being a little bit nervy in this. But yeah, 2-1 win. And we will continue on our merry way. And I absolutely agree with John. We'll touch on this on Wednesday night, but I do think we are about to claim 6 points in the week. Right, there's only a couple of questions to get through tonight, which is absolutely fantastic from my end. Pilgrim Maka asks, seems he is one of the highest paid players. Anyone else think Amici might be a good choice to play as a 10, like what, considering Curtis is nailed down the right side?
Yeah, I mean, I won't answer that question in full earnest, but very quickly, I do think that's worth pointing out that because it's probably not really mentioned, and I know I love to mention tactics, formations, and all such things. The answer to the, what do we do with Tolle injured question, do we play Watts or Curtis as the other striker, has kind of become neither of them. We kind of quietly shifted to more of a 4-2-3-1. So we have been a little bit more experimental with the formations. We had the tried and tested 4-4-2. We had a 3-4-3 in the first half against Donny, which became a 4-3-3 in the second half. And then in these 2 away games, it's kind of been a bit more of a 4-2-3-1 with Curtis and Watts and Dale behind Peppel. So that's interesting enough. Comment from Stevie Vaughan, which, okay, I know Joe and Star, but I think it's really relevant to this.
I'll wait for it.
Okay. But I think if we did want to go back to 4-4-2, there's somebody obviously who could be starting with Peppel, who I will come back to.
Yeah, anyway, well, I mean, in that case, Adam, this one can be for you from Stevie Vaughan. Why doesn't Aseni seem to get some games? I assume that we will be going back to a structured 4-4-2 against Huddersfield because Talai will be back. And then you've just got Aseni to come off the bench for one of Peppel and Tolle, haven't we?
Yeah, I'd quite like to hear actually from Sam Down on that one.
I've got things to do. I don't want to keep going to Sam for answers.
Is that I'm the fact that I'm the chairman of the Owen Aseni fan club? Yeah, I don't know what's it's weird. It's weird. Going into December, he was one of the rare bright spots in a really dull season. He got 7 goals and I think 5 assists by Christmas, which, considering he didn't have that many minutes, is actually really damn good. He had that injury, had a couple of lackluster performances coming back from the injury, and just doesn't seem to have been trusted since, with more than about 5 minutes at the end when the game's already won. So yeah, it's a really odd one. I think for someone who, from very limited minutes, got 7 goals and 5 assists prior to his injury at Christmas, I would like to see him get given more of a chance. Maybe there is something we don't know about, maybe in terms of like an underlying personal issue, or he's carrying like an underlying knock. If that's the case, fair enough. Like, it's always commonly said that so much that goes on in football fans don't know about. But if we have all the evidence, I do want to see Owen and Steady get more of a bit of game time, because I do think that as much as we've earned a very well-deserved 4 points on the road, it could have been even 6. I don't think it's anything like as good as that, blusteringly good way we played in that week from Blackpool, Orient, Cardiff. That week was the absolute, wow moment of the season, and that was with that, dynamic, high press, fast stretch 4-4-2. So I would probably bring, to answer the last 2 questions in one, and then I will let someone else talk. I can see the argument for having him each year to 10. I wouldn't say it's because of the fact he's a high earner. That's a bit of a sunk cost fallacy. But there is a talented player in there somewhere, so I can see the argument for having him as a 10. But I can see an even bigger argument for just going back to an energetic, structured 4-4-2 and having Peppel and Osteni up front. This is what I would do. But there we go. That's just me.
Last 2 questions are the ones that everybody wants to know. There's nearly 700 people watching live.
Oh, and they're both for me. Brilliant.
Have you, if you've tuned in halfway through tonight's show, you will be able to catch it on YouTube. Or if you're listening to the podcast, our valued audio listeners, you're able to catch it on all podcast platforms when Aaron sorts it out for us. So as you can probably imagine, the last 2 questions will be for Sam. And I'm going to come to John for one that I'm going to create for him, because I've not actually come his way for a question yet. Aaron asks, Sam, which tedious 0-0 did you make your mum sit through this year for Mother's Day celebrations?
None, because she's away in Somerset. Moving on.
And the one that literally...
She would have had one had she not been in Somerset then, is my understanding.
Would have been a tedious 2-2 draw instead, maybe, I don't know.
The one that absolutely everybody is dying to know what happens for the rest of the season regarding the banana bus. Even the banana bus is on the injury list.
It's the banana. Very good, Joe. Very good. For those of you who don't know, and for those of you who enjoy following the Pie Face vlogs, which I appear in, basically when we were waiting at Madison Roundabout, a normal pickup spot, we had the very concerning news come through from one of our Cornish mates that the rear suspension had gone on the banana bus. It wasn't roadworthy, and it was being towed back to St Austell with our esteemed bus driver in tow. Not the news we wanted to hear at 7:15 on a Saturday morning going to Reading. What followed was a frenetic booking of Ubers to Plymouth railway station, a frenetic purchasing of 2 together rail cards to save money on the price, and the train from Plymouth to Reading, to which I can only apologise to the non-football people who were in the vicinity of us, loud, obnoxious lot. That we weren't that bad, mostly. As to what's happening to the bus, well, I won't go into too much detail because it's not my bus, but let's just say it's not a cheap job to get done. But I'm hopeful it will be back on the road for Bradford. But we'll see. We'll find a way of getting there. If not, don't worry. Well, I'll be at Bradford. One way or the other, whether it's on the bus or otherwise. But hopefully it'll be back on the road to Bradford. It's the short answer.
I can't wait for the next edition of Pie Face's vlog for the Bradford game to come from the back of Coach 1. I think that's going to be absolutely box office. Let's hope. Let's hope the banana bus recovers, because it is a part of Argyle away, isn't it? It's just part of the whole day. John Alsop, last question is for you. As we head into the next week then with 2 home games against teams who are in and around us, just where after this weekend do you think our playoff chances lie? Have they increased, or have we attained a status quo from the weekend?
Thursday, looking forward to Tom Cleverley's press conference 2 days before the Bradford game, where he grimaces and goes, some bad news about the banana bus, I'm afraid. Turned out to be a little more serious than initially the roadside mechanics thought. Listen, try and nurse it back. Where do they stand? It's the same. I think it's the status quo, isn't it? Basically, it was a weekend where didn't lose any ground on Huddersfield because they were apparently not fit to wear the shirt.
Is it a make or break week?
Yeah, I think so. And I think for that reason, it's kind of like quite pleasing to come out of the first game of it with everything as you were, there's a world in which we could have lost that game. Obviously, then Reading get a march on us. Stevenage win. Huddersfield could very easily have won a game against the on paper, the worst team in the league. And suddenly we're struggling, and we're further back. So, to have one more game ticked off the calendar and a tough one at that for us, which is why I think Cleverly was absolutely right to say it was a great point. It's obviously would have been nicer to win, but I don't think we can have any complaints about the result as discussed earlier. But also, it's a game where we haven't allowed them to create any more of a lead over us. And I think I had a little disagreement with Graham on the last pod where he said he felt we needed to go there and win. I said at the time a draw would be a good result. So I think that's how it played out. So it's as you were, and then we have 2 games at home, and it does seem like we're kind of wrestling the home and the away form back towards like a more traditional balance, or at least we're just better both away from home and at home because we're a better team. We look quite good at home, and those those stats you read out earlier for Stevenage don't sound great away from home. Huddersfield, I think, anyone who is in any doubt about their current form just needs to go and listen to their fans on Twitter at the end of yesterday's game. Obviously, does not guarantee that we'll win either game. Very much Huddersfield have the players to hurt any team on their day, but I think we should be the favourite for both these games. And I think if we can get 4 points out of them, obviously 6 would be amazing, but I even think 4 would be probably okay. And we're right in there. It's a playoff chase where we have had to have an unbelievable run of form to get into the thick of it. We've had to win pretty much, every single week for going back a long time. Just have any chance of being in the mix. Now we're in the mix. I don't think we're going to need to win every single game because, every game you don't win, there'll be, statistically likely there'll be at least 1 or if not 2 teams who are there or thereabouts as well who do win just because it's very congested. But not every team in that race is going to win every week. I very much doubt there's another team in there just based on having looked at them and their results who are going to put together a ridiculous run and make it theirs. I was laughed at privately for saying in a chat the other week that I thought we might finish 5th by Sam and others who said they felt that was an impossibility. Well, now Stevenage are 5th. Obviously, there's a healthy dose of that being down to Stockport having, I think, 2 games in hand still, but they are on a very poor run of form, or a poor run of form. Certainly, very poor might be pushing it, but they look beatable. So I think it's probably playing for 2 spots. And again, we're in the best form of any of the teams in there. And my analysis from the weekend on that point remains, from midweek on that point remains unchanged. I'd rather be in our position with our form. And I think it's probably going to take less good form, as it were, than we have shown to get in there now that we are in there. So, if we lose the next 2 games, obviously it probably is make or break. I think losing them both, I think, would be really tough. I think we could draw them both, or we could, certainly get 4 points and still be in there. I guess there's a world in which we could lose them both and obviously lose those advantages on those 2 teams, and that would be very difficult. But it's possible some of the other teams around us also have a bad week, and you never know. So I don't want to completely say it's written off, but
there we go. That's it. Hour and 15. That's as close to an hour as we've got for at least about 2.5 years of doing this podcast. Thank you to the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of you for tuning in. I have to say I am loving the banana bus / injury crisis meme comments that are coming through. They all seem very appropriate. If Tom Cleverly comes out with a comment about it in the press conference tomorrow, I think I might actually lose all sense of composure. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. Join us again on Wednesday night. We will be back post the Stevenage game. It will be me, Sam, and Graham Clark in situ for that one. So do join us on Wednesday night. We'll be here 8 o'clock usual time to do it all again. From all of us at Argyle Life and the Green and White podcast, enjoy Tuesday night. Don't boo Jordan Houghton. Go on, you Greens.